All right. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Tacon One podcast. I've got two guests today. We're going to be talking about some executive protection. I have Karl Kirchstein. He's the lead protection agent with Gray Shadows Protection. And then we have Gerard Boniello. He's part of the executive protection boards. He's got a long history in the executive protection world. So both of you guys, welcome to the show and thanks for being here.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. So Karl, you and I have got to work together with Gray Shadows quite a bit. How you work, you're professional, and I'm excited to have you here and talk about some of the things that are going on in the executive protection world. Gerard, you as well. I mean, very experienced. I'm super excited to have you and to hear your input on some of these topics. So, if you want to take a second to introduce yourself real quick.
Yeah, sure. Hi, everybody. Karl Kirchstein. I am the lead executive protection agent for Gray Shadows Protection. Got many years of experience in this. Helicopter pilot, done a little bit of everything. Firearm instructor, on my own range. And now I'm here in Colorado doing executive protection the last couple of years, and then I had about 6-7 years in Minnesota before I moved out here.
Very nice. Gerard, do you want to introduce yourself, sir?
Sure. I'm Gerard Boniello. I'm originally from New York. I moved to Boston about 35 years ago. Love it here and would not go back to New York if you tried to drag me there. But I started in the industry back in, I would say, 1991. I've been in the industry since that time. I've done a lot of subcontracting. I was overseas in Afghanistan and Haiti on government contracts. And in 2000, I started a company called Corporate Resources Group, which was an executive security firm. In 2012, I sold that to a California-based company. I worked for them for 4 years and then decided that I wanted to move on and open up another company. And in 2016, opened Omnium Protection Group. And we've been operating since 2016, based in Boston, but do work globally.
Very nice. So I guess the first question I'd like to ask both of you is, Tacon One primarily is a training company, and there's tons of opportunity to train executive protection. Do you guys think there is a portion of executive protection training that is underestimated? For instance, I hear some guys saying like, oh, it's not important to have EP driving training, or, firearms aren't required. It's not that big of a deal as long as you have a concealed carry, so on and so forth. So, I guess what's your guys' take when it comes to executive protection training?
Sir, I'll let you.
Me? Okay. Well, I think everybody in the executive protection community that's actually doing the work needs to have a foundation of training. Folks retire from different agencies. They have no executive protection background whatsoever. And because they were in maybe prior law enforcement or another security branch of the security services or wherever they're coming from, they feel that, they can do executive protection. But the reality is it's very unique. It's very different. It requires a lot of customer service based thinking. It requires a lot of advanced thinking. You need to understand, the difference between executive protection and all of the other domains out there. In law enforcement, they're running to the problem. In executive protection, we're running away from the problem. And it's just a matter of really understanding the fundamentals of executive protection And that can only be really achieved two ways. One, whether you go through some sort of specific training for it, or you've been operating in this industry for so long that you've developed those skills just based on the time that you've been in. And regardless of whether you have training, when you go out into the real world, things are going to be vastly different than the training that you receive. So that is another element that experience is extremely important in this industry.
I agree with Jared 100%. You know, law enforcement's trained to run into the fire, run into the problem. You know, we are trained to, you know, exfil the asset or get the person out of there as fast as possible. You know, I happen to be an alumni, going back to what our Jared said, is that I happen to be an alumni of LaSource and Associates. I think Joe and his team did a great job. That's the basis of my foundation here in Colorado. Also took some instruction in Minnesota with A&S Security back many years ago. But you do need to have a solid base from which to learn from and then grow from, and then don't let it get rusty. Take additional courses. I'm looking at taking some more courses this year with AS3, Pablo Ortiz. Great guy. Not trying to throw a plug, but Joe, you know, some questions come up. There's about as many EP schools, instructors, trainers say they're trainers. Could you just break down, if you were to, I would give you 5, you know, options of EP's training schools. What would you pick? And, you know, just briefly, why?
So if you're asking me for my opinion on the executive protection schools out there that I would recommend, and with full disclosure, I do have a personal relationship with Joe where I've been a role player, and I've also done some small presentations for him. I would rate the school at the top, his program at the top, because he is always looking to improve things. You know, he just does not rest on his laurels and just continue to teach the same information. He's always looking for how to build a better mousetrap. And a perfect example is at the recent IPSB conference, Joe was a speaker, and he was talking about utilizing AI in some of these assessment programs. They're really good stuff. So I would say Joe, followed by perhaps ESI and EPI. I think those two, you know, at one time ESI was named the quote Harvard of bodyguard schools, end quote.
Right.
So at ESI, Jerry Hang, at EPI, I think they offer great programs. Then we have Bob Oatman and Associates, and he's been doing this for quite some time. Written several books, some of which I have behind me. Highly rated program, and I would put him up there as well. And then there's so many other ones that are just sort of on the peripheral that, you know, I think the most important thing about going to a school is seeing what they are actually teaching and what their experience is in teaching. You know, there's an old saying, those who can do, those who can't teach. So you want to make sure that you're learning from somebody who has actually done it.
Yep, I agree 100%.
Yeah.
I actually
So,
have go ahead, Dustin.
Another thing that or at least I've experienced here in Colorado, is there's a lot of companies out there that advertise themselves as executive protection companies. You know, I've worked with quite a few out here, and you know, I show up to these details and it's grossly unprepared. You know, they're not dressed according to the job. A lot of issues. So, I guess if you were going to partner with a company or work with a company, how would you ensure that they're vetted and they're actually an executive protection company?
I want to take that a step further too, if I could, Dustin, based upon who the guest is. I mean, you're known for being the sharpest dressed guy in the industry, right? I mean, you look like $1 million wherever you go. So this goes back to Dustin's question. I mean, having a certain look, that's your brand, or and that has to carry across into your team, correct? And the people that you work with. Can you delve into that kind of with Dustin's question?
Well, first of all, thank you for the compliment. And
You
I'm
are.
about $999,000 shy of $1 million right now. But I think that brand is important. I think that brand is everything. And if you are going to create something, whether it be an executive protection company or a restaurant or whatever it is, you have to lead by example. And that's why I always tell folks that every day is an interview, and whether that's me meeting with an employee, or me meeting with a client, or me just meeting somebody on the plane en route to whether it be a conference or social occasion, you never know who that person might be. And so I've always want to put my best foot forward. I think it's important because it differentiates you from so many others. And with that, you can command certain things like a higher price, a higher rate. You can gain better employees, and by recruiting better quality employees because they want to come work for a quality company, a company that has a reputation for quality. And we were just speaking with somebody today who just reached out to us, never heard from them before. And they basically said that we received their name from a colleague, and after doing our research, we realized that you are known for providing quality. And it's always great to hear, especially from people you have no idea who they are. It's always nice to hear things from people that you know, but it's even nicer when you hear great things from people that you don't know. And so our reputation is, it's very important. And I think that that's, first and foremost, how you build a great company is by building a great reputation. And that reputation is based on truthful, honest service, and providing basically under promising and over delivering every time. And that's what we like to do.
I've got another quick question. Well, maybe not be a quick question. Sorry, Dustin, but to talk to a legend like this guy, I want to pick his brain. Well, it's the truth. I mean, come on, let's call a spade a spade. I mean, you've been around, you walked the walk, you've been in the swamp, you've been in the tall grass. So and I suppose if you had the answer to this, you'd be a millionaire or two over. But as it pertains to a smaller executive protection firm that's growing, very small, maybe a 4-man team, we all started out someplace. You started out someplace. Is it just the consistency, the customer service, and the word of mouth, and the image and professionalism, and then it just takes time? Or is there a special sauce that you can impart onto us, or some words of wisdom that can help us out where, it's great that our colleagues get business, but then there's also times where like, well, why not us? So it's a tough pill to swallow sometimes.
No, I understand. I absolutely understand where you're coming from. And, there are two types of folks, I think, in the industry. There are those that are really trying hard, and there are those that are lucky, and so being in the right place at the right time or knowing the right people will get you business. There's no question about that. And that's why networking is so vital. It's so important. And that's why folks are always saying, well, I see you here, I see you there, because you have to be seen. If you're not seen, then you're forgotten. That's a very important point. And so, yes, with anything worthwhile, it takes time. So you do have a lot of these folks that are fortunate, but more times than not, they do something that destroys that relationship that they've had, or they just don't have the experience to continue on creating that, fostering that relationship, and things usually fall apart. When something comes quickly, it usually goes quickly. So when you've worked hard for it, and I've spent, 30 years doing this, 25 years as a business owner, and I'm still working hard every single day to create that brand, to push our company forward. And it takes time. And when I tell you, my life is my company, and it is my brand. 16 hours a day. Uh, did I wish I had to do that? No, I don't. But it's important to me. It's my passion. It's what I want to do. And I would say to anybody that has a smaller business that's trying to scale it up is just be consistent. Be consistent. Be passionate. Know your worth. Don't undersell yourself. Walk away from some jobs that they may seem they may not be the right fit for you, but because there's a certain financial reward that you're looking to taking it. But if you don't think that you can support that job and do a great job at doing it, then just walk away from it. Because in the end, if you fail, the client fails, everybody
Right.
failed, and that is something that is tough to get beyond.
Yeah. So Gerard, you've been doing this a long time. I mean, you're an expert in this. Obviously, with recent events, we just had that homicide of the UHC CEO. Everybody's seeing a real uptick in service requests. Does it concern you at all that there are these companies out there who, again, are saying that they're executive protection companies and they're picking up this work and kind of giving, I guess, the industry a bad name?
So, yes, it concerns me because we provide a serious service, and we're not just selling widgets out of a store. So anybody who says that they do executive protection and doesn't have the background, the pedigree to do it, they're putting not only themselves at risk, but they're putting their employees at risk, their company at risk, they're putting the principal at risk. And I we work in the educational system, and so we have a lot of private schools. And I always tell my team, I don't care what we're doing or who we're doing it for. Protecting these children is the most important job that we have, because when you're a CEO or you're a celebrity, there's a trade-off there. You're trading your privacy, you're trading off your security for fame or fortune. But when you're a child, you're just going to school, and you're just there to learn, and you're just there to be a kid. And I tell them that they're our tiniest principles, and that's why we invest so heavily in training our people and making sure that they understand the importance of that particular position that they have. It's the same thing with these folks that are out there trying to market themselves to these companies, trying to protect these CEOs. What type of background, what type of experience? This is when you see everybody come out of the woodwork as an expert, and they're out there trying to sell their wares. And oftentimes, they just don't have the pedigree to do it.
I think within an hour and a half of that shooting in New York, there was somebody on LinkedIn, I won't say who, that had written a case study. I'm like, okay, nice chat GPT. That's it, right? I mean, come on, Well, she was really good at it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very concerning. I mean, some of the things that I've seen out here, like I said, working for some of these companies, and I'll show up and I'll fulfill my obligations, but it's like as soon as I leave, I know that's the last time I will work for that company again. Like you've built your brand, you've been doing this forever. You're, like Karl said, a legend. Everybody follows you and wants to know what you're up to and what you're doing in the industry.
What
So I
suit you
mean, it
have?
proves, it proves that your name is everything in this industry. And if you've had 100 successful details and then you have one that just goes horribly wrong, or you make the worst mistake, that could be the end of it for you.
Yeah.
So,
No, it's very true, and that's why when we're partnering with folks, we vet them. Fortunately, you know, because I've been in this industry for so long, I have great relationships with people, on a global basis. So I know when I'm reaching out to somebody, I either know who they are, or I know them through reputation, or through colleagues, and I feel very comfortable with them. And then I'll sit and we'll chat about it. We'll get to know them, basically an interview, and to find out if I feel comfortable with them supporting our clients, and I have to have that comfort. And I would want somebody to do the same if they were coming to us to look at us and vet us. And that's, I could tell you in the very beginnings of this, we made some very poor choices because we were inexperienced. And it goes to exactly what you're saying. We chose vendors that we did not vet properly, and the clients came back with very negative feedback. And we learned from that. And fortunately, I mean, that was, very early, and I'm talking in the early 2000s when we started the company. But since then, we have a very comprehensive vetting process for our vendors.
very good. I think that's so crucial too, is
Harvey.
people may get confused that, this is a company that they may have been around a long time, but, look into the reviews. And I would caution anybody who is looking for executive protection right now, all these people who are coming out of the woodwork and finally realizing that it's an important service that they need. I would just caution them to dig a little deeper, and check the reviews, really dig deep into the services that they provide. Because, like we just discussed, I would hate for a client to get a company and blame the entire industry on poor service, and then it's well, I tried executive protection and it just didn't work for us, or, it gives everybody else a bad name. So, and I've, working with Karl and Gray Shadows, that's one thing I can say is, they're very cautious the whole time, particular, and they make sure every duck is in its row, and, the professionalism is just, top notch. So, those are the type of companies that I like to work with and work for, are the ones who take it very serious down to the very minor details. So, and Karl bringing up, you're so sharply dressed all the time.
Yes,
That's important. Very
it is.
important. Every detail is important in this industry.
It really goes back to, I've been in a few classes, I think in a couple with you, or doing some light EP training, and looking around the room, and I'd actually thought of you, sir. It's like, I was looking around what they were dressed in. I'm like, yeah, I think Gerard would probably roll his eyes at this. And I even made a comment, I believe. I'm like, find yourself a good tailor and a good pair of shoes. That's that. Because not everybody is a size 42 regular or 44 regular. There are guys that, are differently proportioned. So I said, find a good tailor and a good pair of shoes. That's the first start. So it's awesome. Gerard, with your, I don't know how many boards you sit on, committees. I mean, you've got cool guy EP stuff. I want to talk about that. Well, I do want to talk about that. I mean, you've got a vision. This vision started long ago, obviously, and you're doing your vision, which is awesome. You've partnered with Pablo Ortiz and AS3, and you're on all these steering committees. How do you get to a point where you can spend that time away from your business and get involved and network? Like you're saying, hey, get all network. We're doing it now here with podcasts and so forth, and there's conferences, but how do you find time and to get everything into your day, and tell us a little bit about some of the committees and different things you're involved in.
Well, I make time because it's important, and also, like I said, my life is this part of the industry, and so everything that I do is basically geared towards it. It's not listen, it's not a lifestyle for everybody. I can tell you that right now, and maybe I would, much rather prefer owning a doggy daycare because I love dogs. But this is what I do. It's one of the few things that I do very, very well. So it's important to me that I do it well. It's important to me that I make sure that everything that we do is done to a level that I feel comfortable with. So I've created a couple of different organizations. I've sat on a couple of different boards, but really, it's the most important thing if somebody wants to be involved in this industry is to just get out there and do it. You can sit back and watch from the sidelines, but you have to get out there and just be part of it. Step up. Like we were talking at the IPSB, if you want to further your career, you could volunteer for the IPSB or you could volunteer for other organizations, and that gets you involved in it, and that puts you, gives you face time with the folks that are important in that organization, and you get to meet different people that you probably wouldn't have met otherwise by sitting on the sidelines. And it's just important to be active in these things, and it does take networking and going out and having these dinners with folks. It's all work, and you have to put the time and the effort into it. Lots of times you'll go to conferences and you'll see folks that decide to go do their own thing and go drinking with their friends and all, and that's great. But like we said at the conference, try to step out of your comfort zone. Try to step in, meet somebody that you don't know. Walk up to somebody that you don't know. Because if you're just hanging out with your friends, which is great, but it's not really pushing your needle forward. And so you just need to get out there and do it. And I'm active on social media because that is a great platform. But also it's a double-edged sword as well. And this is also how we do vetting of vendors. We look at social media, and we're parts of, we're members of different social media groups in the executive protection community. And we see the comments that people put out there, and what I always say is social media is the best lie detector, because people actually will, be themselves on social media. And you get an insight that you wouldn't normally get sitting in front of somebody trying to interview them. So the double-edged sword, social media is a double-edged sword. So I tell people just be very careful about that. But it's also great for getting your name out there. And
great advice. So being in the industry as long as you have, I imagine you've come across quite a bit of different types of gear and, what people carry. Being the training guy, I'm curious to, how has that evolved over the years from what the average EP guy carries to how it is now?
I mean, when I first started out in that, you carried a pen and 3x5 index cards, and you had a revolver. And so things have really come around. Tourniquets weren't even a thing back then that we were carrying. So the equipment has certainly changed, and everybody now has a go bag, and the go bag has so much in there. I mean, it's almost like it's almost like a clown car where you're pulling out all of this stuff out of that go bag. So I think the equipment has really come a long way since I've started in this industry, and some of the stuff is really between the Kevlar clothing to some of the, just the gadgetry that we carry around with them nowadays. It's really, it's amazing. And it's also, again, a double-edged sword because we rely on it so much that what happens if something occurs? Like I always tell when I'm teaching a program, I'm always telling people, don't just rely on your phone. Now, if you have all of your notes, if you have everything on your phone and your phone goes down, you lose it, you drop it in the toilet, it just shuts down, or your battery dies. Then what? So, sometimes we have to go and rely on the old school ways of doing things as well. And that's why I always like to have pen, paper, notes with me at all times, and not just rely on that. But, I'm not the gadget guy. There are plenty of other people out there that are far more experienced with gadgets. I know Joe, the source of being one of them. And I'm sure you guys have a lot more experience with gadgets than I do, but it's come a long way, as has everything in this industry and mostly in life.
I have a question. Sorry. I have a question I come a little bit from a sales background, worked for some larger companies, but with that being said, have you ever gone on cold calls? Meaning, and I know what that means, but like, let's say I have Ball Aerospace down the road, and I know they probably have their own security company at this campus or whatever, but have you ever gone into businesses where you think that, hey, this would be a good place where I could drop a card, a leaflet, introduce myself as, a secondary, or maybe to become their primary? Have you ever tried that approach?
I've never tried that approach as like a primary approach, but if I am somewhere and I happen to see something like perhaps a client or a company that I would like to have as a client, and I just happen to be in the area, then yeah, I'll stop in and see if the security director is there, but I'll do some research first before
Right.
I go in. I'll look them up, I'll see who they are, I'll see if I have any connections with that person, and then I'll see if they have some time. But I find that more often than not, and this is just through my own experience, that people just don't like when people just drop in unexpectedly.
Right.
So I will do it through, whether it be through an email or a LinkedIn. So that to me is, the cold call when you're sending like an unsolicited email to somebody. Fortunately, the vast majority of the work that we do is basically through word of mouth, it's through
Right.
reputation. Some of it is through the marketing aspects that we put out there on like LinkedIn and some other places, but most of it is just, somebody who knows somebody who has had great experience with us and reaches out to them.
That's awesome. And you're very fortunate, blessed to have that word of mouth. That's kind of your funnel to bring business in. And, that's what your hard work of 25, 30 years has brought you. And I just was curious if, for a smaller company starting out, we're going to grind and do whatever we can, trying to get into different avenues, this next year and see where it goes.
I would say, research. There's different organizations, I'm sure. The thing is that when you want to try to sell your service, this is just my own opinion, my own outlook, is that when you want to sell your services to an organization, you want to be the expert in that. And so if you are volunteering, let's say, some time to go to and I don't know if they have Rotary Club meetings or, I'm sure they have school committees and some other things that you can go and do a half an hour presentation on security awareness, executive safety, just offer that. And then you'll be surprised at how many organizations, will come to you and say, I saw your presentation, or a colleague of mine was present there and would like to talk to you about X, Y, or Z. And it's just, part of the growing is when you're starting out and you're trying to make your bones in the industry. It's just, you have to be everywhere. You can have the best service possible, but if nobody knows about you,
Right.
that doesn't matter. So got to get out there.
Okay.
So, Gerard, for somebody who's watching this or is thinking about getting into the executive protection, just starting out, maybe they don't have background in law enforcement or military, but they've started in security and they just want to take that next step into executive protection. I guess what steps would you recommend for them to, break that ice, get into the industry, and then to be successful, just brand new starting out?
Well, if you want to be part of the executive protection industry, I think the first thing that you have to do is go to a program, because that's going to give you a foundation. You're going to then be at least able to understand some of the nomenclature, some of the language, some of, the expectations in the industry. And then from there, it's just really getting more knowledge, going out there and networking more, and taking every job that comes your way. You have to be that yes man. Whenever something comes to you, got to be the go-to. Take it. And if you're starting out, take it and prove your worth, and develop a reputation for quality, and that will take you very far. But first and foremost, get some training behind you, some quality training that will allow you to take it to the next level.
Of course. Yeah, and I think, executive protection gets kind of this glamorous look. A lot of people think it's, this super fun, super cool James
John
Bond
Wick.
job. John Wick, yeah. And, it's funny because I try and tell people that, it's a lot harder than it looks. It's hard work. Karl and I just did a detail not too long ago where it was grueling, long days.
Yeah.
I mean, within the first few hours, we had walked 10 miles at least, just running clients back and forth. And, a lot of people get a real gross misunderstanding of what executive protection can look like. So, and I'm sure you've put in countless hours on details, long term. But
He's probably worn about 15 pair of Allen Edmonds shoes by now, right?
At least.
And see, smiles. He knows what Allen Edmonds shoes are. There's the tell right there.
Oh yeah. So, I mean, how would you describe executive protection work, like in a nutshell?
I mean, something that you have to have a passion for, and it certainly has its glamour, but more than that, it's a lot of hard work, and that glamour seems to dissipate pretty quickly when you're doing 26-hour days back to back, working 9 days a week. It's really tough, and I can recall many times where I was questioning, why am I doing this, because it is very tough. It's very stressful. So you have to really want to do this, and most of the time, for a lot of folks that don't have the opportunity to either work on, like, let's say a government detail, presidential detail, a celebrity, an A-list celebrity, it's very boring. It's 95% boredom, staring at a dumpster or a door, or sitting in a chair, and you get that 5% of glamour, excitement. So you really have to know what you're getting yourself into if you want to do this business. Some people love it, some people hate it, but it's definitely different every time.
Would you say, this is my own personal philosophy, and agree with me if you want or disagree, but I think for someone, whether it be getting into it or that has been in it for a while, you have to have a servant's heart, kind of a caretaking heart, or body about you. Otherwise, I don't think it works. Do you agree? Disagree?
No, I mean, I think those are the folks that are the best at what they do. You don't have to have that. You don't have to have that mindset or that feeling about the industry to go into it. But I think you're absolutely right that those folks that have that are they exceed the expectations of everyone else. My director of operations came from a 25-year background in the healthcare industry, and he always tells people when they ask him, well, how did you get into this? He's like, well, because I've just found another way of taking care of people.
Right.
For 20 years, I took care of them in the healthcare industry, and now I take care of them in this way. And so I think, Karl, you're absolutely right, that it's just something, we're protectors by nature. I think quite a few of us, and sometimes that stems from having, problematic backgrounds that, we want to protect people, maybe because of the things that we've experienced.
Sure.
I think that probably has a lot to do with why I do what I do. But
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
And I think like going back to, putting in those 26-hour days and the long, hard, grueling work ethic, companies that set themselves aside from the rest are the ones who don't let that attention to detail fade with that fatigue. It's constantly when, the client steps in somewhere and they don't want you in there, you're checking yourself, making sure your suit still looks good, your attire looks good. You slam some coffee or whatever you got to do to make sure you're still on point throughout the detail. But I think that's where a lot of people break is they realize, yeah, the money's okay, glamorous, like you said, for that 5%, but also it's a lot harder than people think, and you got to stay on top of your game. And personally, that's something I find intriguing and I personally like about the industry is having a standard and trying to do everything you can to go above and beyond. So, again, going back to the companies that, advertise themselves as executive protection and then they show up in tennis shoes and tactical pants with a blazer on, pretty easy to outwork those guys, in my opinion. Gray Shadows is huge on that. Carl gets in trouble for drinking the wrong water out of the vehicle. So
Don't drink the principal water.
So yeah, absolutely.
Gotta have a little warning once in a while.
Right. You got to feel like the principal when he's not looking. So.
Right. Yeah.
So do you find a problem with guys who are like fresh out of the military or fresh out of law enforcement, finding it difficult for them to break that habit to run towards the threat and, I guess, focus on the threat as opposed to getting the principal off the X? Is that something you find pretty often?
well, are you speaking specifically of former law enforcement or just
Yeah.
general?
So speaking for myself, when I went to my first executive protection training, there was a scenario where a threat came out from around a corner with a firearm, and my first instincts, having spent 8 years in the military, 8 years in law enforcement, was to go towards the threat and handle the threat. Where, as you know, in this industry, it's more accurate to get the principal off the X. So it took some, I guess, additional training and some additional understanding on my part to, we're in a different role now. And then as we host these trainings and I watch more trainings, I see that to be a trend with law enforcement or military guys, because it's been, burned into their brain that that's what you do. You handle the threat and then everything else follows behind. So is that something you see as well?
I do see that. What I see more often than not, and this is, I'm a huge supporter of law enforcement and the military, of course. But I don't think that everybody is cut out for this particular work, because what we see is that folks that are retiring or coming out of those industries, they just don't understand the customer service aspect of this, and they rely too heavily on their uh, what they had at one time was authority, which you don't have, when you were in the private sector.
Yes.
So that is the biggest thing that we see and have difficulty with, is that transition when somebody is coming from the public sector with some level of authority to the private sector where they don't. So we've, I've had interviews with law enforcement folks that have wanted to come and work with us, and I've said to them, no, I'm sorry, just don't have it. I we have one particular guy who actually does work with us when we turned him down the first time, and he asked why. He's like, I've never, I'm not interviewed. I've been in law enforcement for quite some time, and this is my first time interviewing. And what did I do wrong? And we explained to him, it's like, it's nothing that you did wrong. It's just that we don't feel that you have that customer service understanding. And we worked with him. He really wanted to get involved in the industry, and we did. And he has transitioned nicely. But I think that is the thing that we find the most, is that folks have to understand that it's very much a customer service based industry, and it's not law enforcement, it's not police work, it's not military, it's private security at a different level, but still private security. And we're very customer service centric, and you have to be, because you're representing the client, you're representing their brand, and you have to understand that when you're working with these folks.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, is, they're hiring you for protection, yes, but you're going to be viewed as part of their company or part of whatever they have. You're basically a part of what they're doing. So they're going to want that particular look and that customer service. That's a very great point.
So, how long, sir, do you think before the uptick that we've seen, unfortunately, with the untimely death of the CEO in New York? First, I guess the first question is, it's great to see that there's so many job postings and people getting work. That's fantastic. It's sad that it's a tragedy that had to, I guess, bring this to light, that it's a needed thing. I guess my question is do you feel that it's opened up the eyes of corporate CEOs, executives, to real threats, more threats, taking those threats more serious? And then additionally, does it give us more credibility in the sense that, these guys are, because a lot of people have not had private protection or EP or close protection. So what are your thoughts that kind of go through people's head? Oh, geez, I need this. And then they get into it and like, I never knew that this whole world existed.
Well, there was an article today about I forget where it was exactly. You could look it up, about CEOs are not interested in having executive protection with them. And it's understandable. We work with a lot of clients that they don't want that. They don't want to be seen as somebody who has executive protection for a lot of different reasons. Some are because they don't want to be seen as weak. Some they don't want to be seen as sitting on a pedestal where they need it. But in terms of increased awareness and requests, yeah, without a doubt. I mean, we're fielding quite a few phone calls every day since that has happened and mostly it's about residential and office site assessments. And so we have at least 7 scheduled for this week. And it's becoming a big thing where things that we have said to our clients, ahead of time, they were not interested in it. And now, of course, everyone's running around with their hair on fire and they can't get it done fast enough. And as we tell them, the time to do these things is not during an emergency. It's before the emergency happens, so we can control it. And it's on our timeline and our narrative. But I think that you're seeing companies realizing that just because there is no active threat, there is still could very well be a threat. On the back of my business card, I have something about society has a hard time realizing, why bad people do bad things. It's good people just don't understand that there are bad people that are out there and they're planning violence every day. Sometimes they get caught in the crosshairs of it accidentally, and sometimes they're targeted. But just because they feel like they're not known doesn't mean that they're not known to the people that want to do them harm. So they just need to reevaluate their own personal security, and that includes everything from scrubbing personal information off the internet to just being more security aware, and having contingencies set up in the event of. So it's booming for the industry, and I don't think that it's going to go down anytime soon.
Do you think this is? You said you don't think it's gonna, taper off anytime soon. So historically, at least from what I can tell, is events like this happen, and it seems like there's an uptick in the need or people realizing the necessity of it throughout the duration of the trial, or and then once the media stops covering it, it kind of tapers off. Do you think this was a wake-up call, I guess, big enough for people to realize how important corporate security is or executive protection? Or do you think it'll be another trend that kind of tapers off after things calm down a little bit?
So I think that there's definitely going to be a knee-jerk reaction, and there always is. And when something like this happens, like with a school shooting or anything, there's always a knee-jerk reaction. But I also think that security now has a seat at the table, or plays a bigger role now because of this incident. And will it taper off in time? It probably will. But I think even when it tapers off, I think it's going to be something that is overall a benefit to the security community in terms of how we are now going to be looked at and more involved.
Absolutely.
And so I think we can actually perhaps save a lot of folks from harm if we can get in at the early stages of the security planning.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Agreed.
And Karl, you probably know, or you can relate to this, but when I was in law enforcement, I had a misunderstanding about the role of security. I used to, I'm ashamed to say it, but I would get in on the, they're rent-a-cop type thing, or they don't have what it takes to become a cop. That's why they work security. But having been in private security now for as long as I have, I think people misunderstand how important that role is. Some of the things I deal with in private security, I'm like, wow, this is a real threat. And you deter a lot of stuff just wearing your security uniform, and security guards have a lot more of a role than I think some of them even realize. So, and one thing that's pretty concerning is there's a large population out there that they think what happened to that CEO was the correct thing. They think it was something that needed to happen, and they're kind of idolizing the shooter. And, that's concerning for me. We're seeing a lot of that. It's all over. A lot of people, even government officials, are making comments about, these type of things happen when there's greed, corruption, so on and so forth. But, to me, there's no instance when human life being taken is the answer to really anything, so, if you're a security guard or you work in private security and you're listening to this, I think it's a wake-up call for security as well, that what we do it's important. Executive protection is very important. Corporate security is very important. You never know what's going to be coming walking through those doors day in, day out. So,
to take that a step further, Dustin, it's, corporate risk mitigation, which we do as well, as you've done those with us. So, how much, I get dovetailing on that with security, how much corporate risk mitigation does your company involve yourself with, or do you get a lot of calls for that? Or has that been on the uptick with the economy? Do you see any correlations?
Well, we've definitely seen an uptick, and now more than ever. So I think as companies are growing and the economy is improving, I think that people are looking into that. Corporate security folks are looking more into that, and now, this risk mitigation with the executive safety, the assessments, and the overall security program planning. It's just, it's a big part of what's going on now. And secure transportation, another part of it, because they're executives. They don't want a full security contingency. At least they want to know that they're going to get from point A to point B safely. So secure transportation is another thing that's on the uptick. It's a booming time now for the security industry. And
would you, let's say you have a client who is unsure of what level of protection they want. They're a CEO or they're a high level executive within their corporation, and perhaps they don't want to have a shadow. They don't want an entourage of security with them all the time. They still want to feel like they can live their life without people following them. I guess, what would you recommend to a client right now based on everything that's happening if they don't want a full-time team? Like, what kind of things would you ask them to consider, I guess?
Well, it's a pretty broad question. I mean, we have to look at each individual and take their circumstances into account. Are they high profile? Are they high threat? Do they work in an industry that's controversial? Have they had any kind of threats on themselves, on prior folks in their positions? So it's not unfortunately, it's not a one size fits all answer. And so it's really catered to each individual person. And there are certainly, different things that you can do, all the way from starting off with a very overt detail to working covert protection, where there is protection there. It's just they blend in with the background. To secure transportation, to escorts. There's a whole host of things that can be done, and you don't just have to shove protection in someone's face. More often than not, they're going to reject it, and a lot of times with good reason, because sometimes they just don't need it. But the corporations think that because of something like this, that now's the time to implement it. We have a lot of folks that have, we've started off with them just doing secure transportation, and they've realized that, you know what, I like this level of comfort of knowing that, my safety is being looked after, and we've transitioned from secure transportation to more of an escort to full detail. So it really just depends on the company, the individual in their appetite for it.
So is it safe to say that you start off every consultation with a pretty detailed assessment to, I guess, prioritize, in your professional opinion, what level of security they need?
Yeah, you have to look at each individual organization, person, and do an in-depth threat analysis, because not everybody has the same level of threat. The CEO of Planned Parenthood certainly has different threats than other CEOs that are out there. So everyone has to be individualized, and you have to go to them with definitive information and try to prove your point one way or the other, because these are CEOs that want to know. They usually want data to support it. So that's what we try to do when we have a consultation with someone.
Very, very good. And then another aspect I think that people don't realize is so important, I should say, is conducting your own little assessment, but also doing in advance and assessing what level of security they already have, if it's something you can build off of, or if it's something that you just completely have to scrap and start over. I know that's something I'm seeing lately is people asking, can you just come in and see if we're doing the right thing? And sometimes they are. Sometimes it's just how can you add on to those security measures that they already have? Maybe throwing up a few extra cameras or a few extra hours of patrol service at their corporate site, things like that. So, I think the assessment is something that's very important. And Karl, I think that's something you guys do really well, is go out, you do the advance, and you take everything, every little detail into consideration.
Well, it's go back to like that detail we just did, and then I'm sure Gerard can chime in on this. No detail is ever the same, and once you have a plan, that plan will change. I mean, what was that pretty much? I mean, that was the whole.
Yeah. Every
And that's,
day was
I
something
think that's that is, I think, a big. I don't know if it's a quality or a trait that somebody has to have. Going back to that caregiver attitude, or protector, and then also being adaptable. We have to be, because things are fluid constantly, unless Gerard has some magical plan where all of his advanced work just works like clockwork.
Hardly.
Right.
Adaptability, being dynamic, being flexible, those are all things that you need to be in this industry. And if you don't,
Absolutely.
if you're not, you're not going to make it. Some people come in here thinking that it's a 9 to 5 or a 9 to 6 or 6 to 6. But things change, and you have to be able to deal with those changes, adapt to.
That's a short shift, 6 to 6.
Yeah. Where do we get those?
Yeah. Right.
No, it's that's a very good point, and I think it's important that as you go through the detail as well, you have to be prepared to speak up and have that crucial conversation with the client. Like, this is initially what we thought, but based on now, as we're getting our feet wet into the detail, we might want to add this, or maybe we can break down this. We don't really need this aspect of the security measures we have in place. So you definitely have to be very fluid and prepared to have those conversations with the clients or with their security detail. You know, again, Karl, that detail we just did, I think we had a picture in mind of what it was going to be like. And when we got there, it was not that at all. So we adapted every day. So, so I think that's crucial. So Karl, I guess for you being a lead on a team, what are things that you take into consideration? I know you're really good about listening to others' input, and always being involved in what the rest of the team is up to, and doing a debrief. I think debriefs are just as important as the initial assessment. Would you guys agree?
Yeah, debrief is we call it after action, and what we do is we have an after action report that we have our team fill out. It's important for two reasons. One, you learn from it. Two, we keep it in the file in the event that somebody else is going to go and work that client. They can see what happened or what didn't happen. What happened. We do it after each assignment, not just if something happens, so they can see, okay, there's a trend of, there's a trend of this or there's a trend of that. This was an incident that occurred and this is how it was handled. And it also gives them an opportunity to think about, well, maybe how would I handle something like that occurs? So you want them to think about it before the incident happens and how they would handle it. So debriefing after action reports, very important.
To answer your question, Dustin, I think, with being the lead for Gray Shadows, it's not that I'm any different than anybody else. Anybody on our team can be lead, in the sense if they're, appointed by Sean, because we all have the skills, right? We all have the skills. I think it's repetition. And to answer your question, what things do you need to be aware of? Everything else that everybody else is doing, and then your job. So as it pertains to, if you're the driver, secure driver, so making sure that I'm helping, my main driver, clean the vehicle out, get things prepped, make sure there's nothing left in the vehicle, garbage, this, that, the other thing, wipe down. If I'm over here doing this with another agent, posting or whatever, what's going on? What do you hear? What do you see? And maybe Gerard will disagree with me, but I think as a lead, you have to be good at everything, but just maybe a little more, touched as far as OCD and go over again. It goes back to being a pilot. You can pre-flight once or I can pre-flight twice and make sure, and it saved my ass a couple times. So, to answer your question, again, everybody in our team can be the lead, right? I think it's just, the attention to detail we all take, having, worked with you, having worked with Sean, some of the team members, we all are instilled with, I guess, leadership down, and then we draw on our own skills, whether it be military, law enforcement, civilian, through our schooling, whatever the case may be. But you have to be good, detail oriented. If you're not going to make it in this business. That takes one, I guess maybe I'm overreacting. It maybe takes one left soda can in the car or a bottle of water and a bag of chips that were open. And that customer gets back in and says, oh, this stuff's still sitting in here. That may be a small thing, but it's not. It's perception. In my opinion, Jared. So, hopefully that answers your question. I did the best I could, sir.
Yeah, no, that answers it. And in my opinion, you're absolutely right. It is that attention to detail that they notice. So, and again, that's the thing that sets the good companies aside from the ones who are just faking it to make it, and it's unfortunate that, those companies, they do get money, they do get paid, they do get jobs. And sometimes they get repeat clients who don't know what expert level service actually.
There you go. Exactly. Yep.
So
So they're used to one thing, and we've been involved in that on several details where we go in and do our job. And I'm sure, Jared, you with your background and just, again, I'm not trying to blow smoke, but a lot of people, you've done a lot of great work, and you are kind of an industry icon. So when you do the level of work that you're doing, that spreads just like what we said. And, it's not an overnight process, unfortunately.
Yeah. No, it's not an overnight process, and you're absolutely right. You need to invest time and effort into it, and we hear it all the time when we provide services for a client. They frequently say, "Well, I didn't expect this type of service. I've not received the service. We're working for a large international event producer, and we've done a handful of events with them all over the world, actually, and they say the same thing. It's just like every time it just gets better and better, and we never knew that this is what real security was like. And that is a huge compliment to us, huge compliment to our team, because they're dedicating themselves to perfection. That's what we really try to achieve, always exceeding the expectations of the client.
That's awesome.
fantastic.
You do a great job. Awesome job.
100%. Yeah. And I think for me, somebody I'm very, I guess, ambitious about learning and always wanting to get better. I started the training company because I think training is absolutely crucial, and I wanted to provide a platform where we could bring in the best of the best to teach others and build the community and improve as an industry. I'm happy for every other company that gets work. I'm all about it. And to me personally, I don't ever look like I have competitors. I just have other partners who are also, putting food on their table and doing great things. And watching people like you on LinkedIn and following the things that you do. And, I think it provides a great opportunity for people to see inside the industry and the industry leaders like yourself, and it gives us the opportunity to be like, wow, that's a great idea. I'm going to start implementing those. So I just want to personally thank you for when you post those things. It means a lot to the guys who are invested in the industry. And it's important that you stay on top of it. It's always changing. It's always fluid. And I think no matter how old you get and how experienced you think you are, you should continue training and stay on top of everything within the industry. So, before we close, I always give everybody an opportunity to, have their plug. But if anybody's looking to get involved with you guys, first, like what kind of things are you involved in right now that you have going on, and how do people find you? How do people get involved?
Jared, go ahead.
People can look us up at Omnium Protection Group, omniumpg.com. They can email me, Gerard at omniumpg.com. I'm out there on social media, so I'm pretty easy to find. If anybody has any questions, they want to run some ideas past me, I'm happy to help anyone that I possibly can. I feel, wherever I am in this industry, I didn't get here alone. Other people helped me get here, and I feel it's sort of my way of paying it forward. So I'm happy to help anyone with, with questions, advice, or anything else. I want to thank you for all of your incredibly kind words. I absolutely don't feel that I'm worthy of them.
No, you are.
Yeah, but honestly, I really am just a guy that has been doing this a long time, and it doesn't make me, any better or any more special than anybody else. It's just somebody that has learned from all of the vast number of mistakes that I've made in the past 30 years of doing this. And so if I can help somebody avoid any of those pitfalls, I mean, I'm happy to do so.
That's awesome. Before I say how I can get a hold of us at Gray Shadows, I have a couple things I want to ask Jared. So are you doing any training this year, and what's the next convention you're going to?
So we don't offer, like public training. The only training that we do is for our clients, select clients. We just did a couple of training sessions for a well-known university in Massachusetts, training their security staff in executive protection. In terms of the next conference, there's quite a few of them. So
Right.
I'll be going to, I'm going to London in January for the close protection conference or the executive protection. I've been going for 10 years now, and I don't even know what it's actually called because it has a long name. It's
I know which one you're talking about.
You know the one I'm talking about. So was there. He runs a great conference. It's a 1 day in London. It's terrific. That'll be, I think that's the next one coming up, and that's January, the end of January. And then after that, there's a bunch of other ones. There's ATAP, the Association of Threat Professionals, which is then, I believe it's in February. So I'm usually good for like one a month.
I'll be your bodyguard. You can just put me in your travel bag and take me with me to London. How's that?
No problem. I could use it. I need all the help I can get.
So to get a hold of us at Gray Shadows, so it's www.grayshadowsprotection.com. I can send an email to Sean at Gray Protect, or www.grayshadowsprotection.com. We're on LinkedIn. We're also forming a group called CEPA, which is the Colorado Executive Protection Association. It's already formed. We're in the process of getting that going. And the reason for that is to go back to what Jared said, as far as mixers, get-togethers, networking. So we've had that in the works for a few months. We're just trying to put the finishing touches on it. We've had it in stage longer than that, but life gets busy. So Jared, again, man, I tell you what, it is truly pretty cool to sit and talk to you, because every day I'm like, oh, what's he doing with Cool Guys EP or whatever. You got something going. So I mean, and the other thing I want everybody to know is this guy gives back too. I mean, there was recently a conference in Florida, I don't know, a month or so ago, and he had extra tickets and he was handing those out. The guy is solid. So I mean, there's very few guys that, well, there's a lot of solid guys, but when it comes down to, number one, you and Ben and Joe and Greg Lazaroff, and I can, name a ton of them, but you're right there. So thank you so much for your time.
Well, I appreciate it. It was fun. It was nice to meet you.
Me too.
Guys, I really enjoy, I could talk about EP all day. I actually do talk about EP all day, but I enjoy it, and I thank you for inviting me on. Again, the kind words, and if you need anything, I'm happy to help in any way I can.
I did put a sport coat on, but here's the other part of my boots.
Oh,
I had surgery a couple weeks ago, so I'm like, I'm going on this podcast with Jared. I'm like, I've got to wear some nice threads. And what am I going to do about the shorts?
You're very casual. I should have put on my, my jacket as well.
Because then you'd outdress me, see, because it'd probably be the blue suit, that one blue suit, the power suit. Unbelievable. Thank you so much, Jared. I appreciate it. Thanks, Dustin. Thanks for letting Gray Shadows be on your podcast. And and letting us plug Jared and myself. Any plugs that you want to give yet, Jared, before Dustin pulls?
No, I'm all plugged out. I'm good. If anybody wants me, they know where to find me. I'm pretty easy.
Right on.
Perfect.
Thank you again,
Yeah.
sir.
Yeah, thank you both
All right.
so much for being here, and just another way to give back. So thank you guys for taking time out of your incredibly busy schedules to make time for me and for the industry to give back. So thank you both. I appreciate it.
Thank you.